Welcome back to the Press Club. Before the break, we were talking about the idea of taking the entire cabinet en masse to the various constituencies and meeting with the youth, engaging with them.
Yeah, because our challenge today, which everybody accepts, is that if these youth problems are not addressed now, it could go where the star is suggesting it might go. And if we are, as a nation, collectively concerned about that, then it means we have to redouble our efforts. The traditional way of a minister of youth or a youth council, the top-down approach of saying, listen, we have adopted policies, this is our policy for youth, that is our policy for youth. I'm saying that has not worked for 37 years. So let's look at it the other way. Let's see the government saying to the youth, we have failed you, all of us, Labour, UWP, we have failed you since independence. Come, you are the future. Come and determine your future. So we have this series of 17 conferences over the next 17 months going around the country, coming out of which we will have a policy that has been contributed to by the young people in those discussions. Now, the discussions is not just a one-way talk. The government has to go there and be able to explain what is the difficulty in being able to provide enough jobs for the number of young people leaving school every year. And the average young person expects a job. You know, I keep talking about meeting young people who tell me they've sent out 100 applications and received no responses. So young people go to school, their parents send them to school for an education. Yes, the education is oriented for them going offshore, you know, but those who are here and who have not been able to attain that education that will send them offshore, who are the majority that we're talking about in terms of making those expressions. You need to talk to them about what do they understand employment to be. Does the government owe you a job? Can you create a job by yourself? Is self-employment employment? Why does the government have to create a job for you? Why not? You know, because that would be because why not? You're the government. It's your job to, you got elected promising jobs. Why haven't you presented them? So I'm saying that that recommendation is something that I would share if it is approached in that way, whereby we want to hear what the youth have to say, we want to hear what they are proposing.
Yeah, but is it too late? Because if we're talking about disillusioned youth who don't trust politicians, have no confidence in them, what guarantees do they have that if that idea was to be taken on board, that they are going to be listened to, the action is going to be taken, concrete action is going to be taken to address those issues that are raised at those meetings? And you mentioned continuity earlier on. This close to an election, if let's say the Labour Party jumps on it,
it's too late. It's too late now. When I say it's too
regardless, continuity. How do we guarantee them that once the next government, if it changes, is going to move on with those programs that it has promised to those young people?
If we are to go along those lines,
and that applies to a lot of other things as well.
If we are to go along those lines, if we accept that the youth are frustrated, etc., then we shouldn't expect them to be listening to the parties and candidates in this coming election. They ain't gonna get interested and want to go listen to me. They are already expressing that what they are hearing does not encourage them to want to vote or want to be part of the political process. So I'm saying that the parties, as they stand now, I'm sure will have come up with their own schemes and plans and proposals for their manifestos. But I'm saying that we need to look beyond the election. It can't happen quickly between them because it will be described as an election ploy. But I'm saying that perhaps one of the parties or the National Youth Council or a group of persons unknown could propose to the parties to make what plans you have for the youth a central issue now, ahead of the election, to say what you're going to start doing from the day after you win. I would like to see, for example, the creation in every constituency or the identification of a factory shell. And it's easy to do that with big tents now, where you call it an ideas factory. Bring young people there and discuss with them, what is it that you would like to do for yourself? You must have given that some thought. And what is blocking you? So in that ideas factory, you have volunteers, professionals who are prepared, like I said, to listen more than they are prepared to talk. Because you have to avoid the generational gap where the elderly always feel older is smarter, and therefore it affects how you listen to the young people's plans. Many of us listen with a view to finding out where it will not work, rather than trying to see how it will work. So you have your group of old, middle-aged, but also young people, because we do have innovative thinkers. You know, the youth science fair I always refer to, the winners of those things are my prime candidates. How do we get your project off the ground? You know, and if it is a project that is going to work, that is going to change something somewhere, then that ideas factory, with the support of the state and the private sector, would go and try to identify the funding sources in the private sector, here, there, and everywhere. There are, as we speak on the internet, as you know, companies that invite you to, if you have an invention, you know, they will help you. So I'm saying that's the sort of thing we need to hear. The youth out there, they have ideas. They have young people who can create apps. They do them to play games. They do them as experiments. They need somebody to say to Lime, Digicel, Flow, and all of them, NCRC, everybody involved in ICT and in communication, that hello, we need each of you to contribute to a fund that will be going to help take young people's ideas from off the table and from inside their heads into creating. Sometimes they create something that these same funding people might want to make use of.
Yeah, speaking of contributing to funding, the OEC has this week, the OEC has commissioned, together with this private entity, Vision Fund, I believe the name is, if my memory serves me correct, have been engaging in somewhat what you're talking about over the last, I think, 2 years, 2014, 2015. They've been working with small enterprises, small micro enterprises across the region. They've shifted focus now to the youth, and up to, what was it, Thursday or Friday, they had this session with the South Louis Community College, where they partnered with them to engage the young people in using e-commerce,
like
with an emphasis on crowdfunding, which is a novel way of funding businesses now, because banks are a little antsy about pumping money into startups. So you have an option now where you have this crowdfunding platform, basically inviting people to contribute to your idea. You propose the idea, they offer the money. You decide on your own how you're going to reward them, but that's how you're going to get your funding now, from friends, family, strangers, total strangers who believe in your idea. I was a little disappointed with the turnout. I'm hoping that when we left, it increased. But up to last week, they said they had engaged about 18 students and 2 lecturers in the South, about the possibilities of crowdfunding. So,
well, I think
so those are being explored.
The slow response is as a result of what you've described, the level of frustration, the level of lack of hope. Many might see that as, boy, that's another one of them things. Let me see how it's going before I go and waste my time. Rather than going and seeing if I could make sure my time is not wasted. So you look at, and we can always learn from examples. I have been to other states where in the whole process of reassigning youth to areas of work that can help beyond their families, you have places where, for example, young persons who are certified and qualified but unemployed and who have been part of the rural-urban drift. There are places where they're identified. Let's get all the young people, unemployed people with ideas who are certified from Dennery. Run all of that put together. So you come up with a list and a pool. So you have a pool there of skills that is available in terms of people who can do things. And you find ways and means now to assign those people, reassign them or assign them from out of the urban area back into the rural area to address problems that their competence can. So you have a guy with something in agricultural science, but you know he's been looking for a job at the Ministry of Agriculture or at Union.
Right.
You know, find some way to put his ability to work on a farm, even if he's going to be paid by NICE. You know, a nurse who graduated in Cuba and came back but is unemployed. You know, you find a way to assign her to a medical institution in her community where she's known and therefore would be closer to the people she's dealing with because you're from the community, etc., etc., and find ways and means of sustaining that person until they can be integrated into the system. As we speak, we have so many Cuban-trained nurses and doctors. There are too many.
Yeah, but aren't you perpetuating what I think is the problem in the first place by relying on the government to do that? No. Rather than, you know, the young people themselves initiating the ideas?
Yes, well, I'm saying, like I said earlier, it is, you mentioned a whole list of entities. I said I'll start at the top with government. So that would be government's role. But in terms of that whole thing, that's where the Vision Commission could come in and say, well, listen, this is not only the government's role, because in every community there is a private sector as well. You know, in every community there are people abroad in the diaspora who support the community back home. So let's find a way to find resources to fund that experience. I went on my first visit to Taiwan many years ago. I went to an innovation station, they call it. And what they do there is they invite people, not just young people, whoever has an idea, science-based. You have an idea, you come to them. This is an idea I have. And they put it through. And if it works, there is an entity, a foundation, which includes 3 sets of persons: the state, the private sector, and the innovators. And the private sector contributes to that fund because they know they can benefit from it. So that whenever an invention is workable, the institute would adopt the plan, copyright it in the name of the person who invented it. The private sector would fund the cost of bringing it from idea to reality, and the foundation would ensure that the returns are split in 3. The majority for the inventor and the private sector backer, and the rest, no, the government ain't getting a cut. The rest going into the foundation, the budget, to be able to do more. So government has made an initial injection. It gave the building, and you know, it's giving an annual whatever, let's say 25%, but it's taking nothing out. It's not an investment.
So it's being plowed back in.
So 25% from government, always there, but 75%, or in 330s, 60%, you know, goes to the inventor and the backer. and the other 30% goes into ensuring continuity of the thing. Now, I'm saying we may not be at that stage yet, but if we aim for it and miniaturize it to suit our thing. So when we talk about sending young people who are from Dennery who are unemployed in Castries looking for work in town, if you do that exercise and you could identify how many, with the facts and figures, one can plan. And therefore we have 11 agricultural scientists who are unemployed. How many estates are there in the Dennery constituencies, north and south? You know, how many enterprises, agricultural enterprises in terms of those estates and their businesses can afford to absorb at least one? What would that person do? You know, similarly, the business places, you will have young persons who have studied commerce-related subjects, business-related subjects, but they want to go and work in Baywalk, or they prefer to be, you know, in town. If their orientation could be addressed to say, listen, they have tongue and country again in St. Lucia, because you could go anywhere within an hour, but you can return to Dennery and help bring certain new features to the business sector in Dennery. So, you know, that's why I say it has to be continuous and not a result of an election, or when election is coming, or when the NYC is having a debate. The NYC had an interesting debate last year as to whether the voting age should be decreased from 18 to 16. But it was just a debate for a week. I'm not aware that that debate and that discussion has continued. But the whole question of why youth aren't voting, is it because 18 is too high? If we accept that youth become much more aware much earlier in life now, then an 18-year-old ought to be more aware than a 16-year-old. So the qualification for understanding why you should vote, if it hasn't been accepted and understood at age 18, will it be at age 16? So the question there is not, it clearly is not age, because whether at 16 or 18, the vast majority of our young people still do not vote.
We're due for a break. Let's take the break. When we come back, we'll wrap up our last segment. I want us to shift focus to some of the other groups that we mentioned and how we can address this feeling of hopelessness among the youth. This is the Press Club. We'll be right back.